Okay, so you're gonna look at me. And easiest question, just start by saying and spelling your first and last name for me.
Sure. Deborah, Debra, Gillespie, Gillispie.
Um, and you kind of, what was this when you started? Was it called the Gun Violence Project when you started, or did it have a name for this?
Well, when we started, yes.
When you started?
Oh, when I started, no. I just knew that there were many of survivors who needed an opportunity to share their story. And so I started collecting stories.
So what would you call yourself if I were to give you a title besides I guess, survivor and a mother? Are you the head or the, what, do you have a title for the Gun Violence Project?
The Gun Violence Project, Narrative of Violence in Milwaukee.
That,
And her title, she's one of the principal investigators of the project.
Oh, principal investigator. I like it.
I do too. I misunderstood the question.
That's okay. No problem. So, kind of take me back, probably to your son's death, or maybe it was before. But take me back. What happened? How did before all this even started? How did this originally start? What happened with your son?
My son went out with 5 of his friends at the beginning. Initially, I'm sorry, 5 of his friends to go celebrate his new position. He had landed a corporate position with Corn Wrap Incorporated. And 2 of his friends left early. There was a bartender. She was flirting with my son and his friends. This gentleman who felt that he was her boyfriend became jealous, waited for all 3 to leave, and gunned all 3 down. When I was told that something may be wrong with my son, it was about 2:30 in the morning. I didn't even change clothes. I just ran in my pajamas. I drove to my sister's house, which was also my mom's house, and ironically, the neighborhood I grew up in. And as I'm standing on the sidewalk, I hear the TV blare. Must have been gang or drug related, a triple homicide on Port Washington. My heart dropped, but I didn't know he was on Port Washington. And once I found out that my son was murdered, I've just always wanted to correct that scenario, that it wasn't gang or drug related. He was out celebrating his new corporate job. And how dare someone automatically stigmatize him because he was an African American male.
What year was this?
2003.
2003. It was a triple homicide.
Yes.
Did the person, what's your son's name, sorry?
His name was Kirkpatrick Bickham Jr.
Did the person get caught?
Oh, yes. I tried to catch him myself that day. But I was fortunate enough not to catch up with him.
So the person, did he go to jail?
He did, and he's serving 3 consecutive life sentences.
So your son's killer is in jail.
Jakai Marion.
And you, but even after this, when did this project start? Or when did you decide you needed to tell your story?
Well, I needed to tell my story immediately that day. My ex-husband, thank God, organized a press conference, and we did get to let everyone know that Kirk Jr. was not criminal, and it was not drug or gang related, and why he was at that bar. So we did correct that. But oftentimes, moms or dads don't have the opportunity to do that, voice their opinion. And that's why I thought it was important that survivors be able to share their stories about their loved ones lost to violence, specifically gun violence.
At what point did you, so this happened in 2003, at what point did you say, because you were the first one to tell your story, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
What point did you decide to do that?
I had to take a break. It took me about 5 years to actually start grieving the loss of Kirk Jr. And I started drinking and having some issues of my own. and someone dared me to drive their tractor trailer. And I got in there. Of course, I couldn't drive it the first time, but I enjoyed the power. So when I did went to school for how to drive a truck, which is a mini course, and I hit the road. I was gone from Milwaukee for 4.5 years, driving commercially cross country. And I started asking people to share with me their story. If they had experienced loss of gun violence, and they had. And so I started collecting those stories. And then when I came back, I started collecting stories. I was just driven to ask people if they were a storyteller and if they were a survivor of gun violence. I guess that was my healing too.
How did you collect those stories? Were you recording people? Were you writing them down?
Recording people.
And how?
I had a little bitty recorder, and then as my phone got upgraded, I started using my phone.
And this was 5 years ago? Or
Total, I have stories, and some aren't even in good shape anymore. So I hit the road in 90, I left the state, oh my God, that's a good question. I've been off the road now since 2013. So for 4.5 years, I collected stories, I'd say, in the last 2.5 years of that 4, and since I've gotten back. And some are in tape form, some are on recorded phone, in a phone.
So you just started doing it. You didn't have you didn't have a reason to record them or collect them. You just wanted to.
I think I was motivated because hearing other people share their story also helped me. And I also began to find that after they shared their story, and when they found out I was a survivor, that it was therapeutic for them as well too. And oftentimes when they share their story, they said that they felt great. Number one, they got a chance to share it. Number two, they got a chance to share their version of what happened. And oftentimes correct some things that were said that they shouldn't have been said, like in my case, drug or gang related, and it wasn't.
What do you find that is most often the case that, I don't know if it's a mom or a loved one, said, you know, I never got to say this, or I didn't get to say it publicly. Maybe they said it to their family, but they didn't get to say it in a way that they felt heard.
Definitely, and if you hear the recordings, you definitely hear that a lot, that they didn't have the chance to be heard, or maybe when the news told the story, they went back when this person was maybe a teenager and they were murdered as an adult, and the parent is so hurt because they're wondering, why are you bringing up something that happened years ago? It has nothing to do with why my baby was murdered today.
You guys, how did you get hooked up with UWM?
That's God. Every Friday for my husband and I, is date night. And on Channel 4, it was Moms Demand Action at Sojourner Truth. And I said to my husband, I promise I won't stay. I just need to stop by there, Sojourner Truth, and introduce myself because it had to deal with gun violence. And that's definitely my topic. And I wanted to connect with these guys to see what they were doing. Professor Harris was there. And I told her, I got her contact information, gave her mine, and told her I'd follow up. And thank God I did.
So she said, this is something that's of interest to us. We want the stories you've been collecting?
No, we met, and there were other Mom Demand Action events. I told her I was collecting stories, and she didn't seem surprised at first, but as we kept connecting with each other, she said, Deborah, would you be interested in doing a project with UWM? And I asked what type of project, and she said, put use to your stories, the gun violence project. I said, yes. I mean, I literally cried because that was, I just couldn't believe that someone would take these stories seriously, and she did. UWM did.
What, I guess, what ultimately do you want to see happen with your stories?
I'd like them to be archived, And I look forward to UWM adding the technology that will make these stories come to life. I think that would be awesome. And I also am happy to see the survivors find peace and worth in seeing their story shared.
Sorry, we'll just wait 1.5 seconds.
If you poke your head out and tell them we're doing an interview, I'm sure they.
I don't like to do that.
Okay.
Rebecca has no problem doing that.
Hey, I'm sorry. We're doing an interview. Would you guys be able to be a little bit quiet? Thank you.
I was going to do
I'm
it.
the nice guy.
This
She's
one-
Whatever, you got rid of
This
this.
one of my students, so she's getting loud.
So if you, I guess ultimately, you know, the stories are coming to life. Ultimately, what do you hope the community gets from this?
That gun violence is just not a black or brown issue. Gun violence is a people issue. It's all over the state of Wisconsin. We're having issues or incidents with gun violence. And I hope that we can come together to resolve some of these issues. I know UWM can't say that they would like criminal background checks for private citizen gun sales, but I can say that. And that and many other responsible gun legislation.
You want responsible gun legislation?
Definitely. Of course UWM doesn't, but I did.
That's okay. That's perfect. I don't think I need anything else. Since she's mic'd up, do we want to do like a walking shot down the hall with her? I'll pull this off.